My name is Colette Fairbanks. I'm 32 years old. And 8 months ago, a police officer knocked on my door at 6 in the morning to tell me that my husband had been found at the bottom of a ravine, 2 miles off the highway in the wreckage of his truck. I remember exactly what I was doing when I heard the knock. I was standing in the kitchen in my socks waiting for the coffee maker to finish. The sky outside was still that strange gray-purple color, not quite night, not quite morning. I had texted my husband the night before asking when he'd be home. He was driving back from a job site 4 hours north. He never replied. When I opened the door and saw the officer's face, I already knew. You always know, even before they say a single word. Something about the way they hold their hands, the way they look at you. Not at your eyes, but somewhere just past them, like they're bracing themselves too. He said my husband's name. He said the road had been icy. He said there were no other vehicles involved. He said they were very sorry. I don't remember sitting down, but somehow I ended up on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinets and the officer crouching in front of me saying, Ma'am, is there someone we can call? His name was Matteo. Matteo Fairbanks. He was 35 years old, a structural engineer who drove too far for work and never complained about it, who made terrible eggs on Sunday mornings and insisted they were perfect, who always texted me when he arrived somewhere safe. Until he didn't. The next few months are hard to describe. People talk about grief like it's a wave that hits you once. It's not like that. It's more like the ocean just becomes your whole world. Some days it was manageable. I went to work. I answered emails. I ate dinner. Other days I couldn't leave the bedroom until noon. I found one of his flannel shirts in a laundry basket 3 weeks after he was gone, and I sat on the bathroom floor and held it for almost an hour. I didn't wash it for months. Part of me was afraid that if his smell faded, something real would disappear with it. My younger sister came to stay with me for the first 2 weeks. I'll call her by the name she goes by. Everyone calls her Bryn. She's 4 years younger than me and has always been the practical one, the one who makes lists and handles logistics while I feel things too loudly. She handled the calls to his family, the paperwork, the casseroles from neighbors that kept appearing on the porch. I don't know what I would have done without her. But eventually, she had to go home. She had her own life, her own job, her own apartment 3 states away. And when she left, the house got very quiet. That's the thing nobody tells you about losing someone. It's the quiet that gets you. Not the big moments, not the holidays or the anniversaries, though those are hard too. It's the Tuesday evenings when there used to be noise and now there isn't. It's reaching for your phone to send a stupid photo of something you saw on your walk, and then remembering there's no one to send it to. 8 months passed like that, slowly, and then somehow, all at once. Then one afternoon in early March, my sister called. I was at my kitchen table, not doing much of anything. Just sitting with a cup of coffee that had gone cold, watching the rain hit the window. When I saw Bryn's name on my phone screen, I smiled a little. She called every few days to check in. Usually chatty, usually full of stories about her coworkers or something ridiculous she'd seen on her commute. But when I answered, her voice was different. She didn't say hello. She said my name first, just my name. And something about the way she said it made my hand tighten around the phone. Colette. Hey, I said. What's wrong? Nothing is wrong, she said, but she said it too quickly. I mean, I don't know. I need to ask you something and I need you to stay calm. That is, without question, one of the worst things a person can say to someone they love. I immediately did not stay calm. Bryn, what's happening? I heard her exhale. Then she said, Can I send you something? A photo. I need you to look at it and tell me what you think. A photo of what? Just look at it first. Okay? Just look and then call me back. She hung up before I could argue. 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed with a message. The image loaded slowly, the way photos do on a bad connection, top to bottom in pale strips. And then I saw it. The photo showed a man sitting outside what looked like a diner, somewhere rural. I could see a gravel parking lot and pine trees behind him. He was wearing a gray jacket and holding a paper cup. His head was slightly turned, like he'd been caught mid-conversation and hadn't noticed the camera. His face. I brought the phone closer. My eyes went over every part of that face. The jaw, the slight unevenness of his nose, the one he'd broken in a pickup basketball game when he was 19 and never had properly fixed. The way his left eyebrow sat a few millimeters lower than the right. Small things. The kind of things only someone who loved a person would memorize without meaning to. My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I called Brennan back immediately. "Where did you get this?" I said. I wasn't even asking. It came out flat, breathless. "A woman I follow online," she said. "She posted it this morning. She volunteers with a resettlement program in northern Montana. She said they found a man wandering near the Blackfoot River back in November. Badly hypothermic, no ID on him. He'd been in a rehabilitation facility ever since." She posted the photo asking if anyone recognized him. November. That was 3 months after the accident. 3 months after they had shown me a death certificate with my husband's name on it. "Bryn," I said slowly. "They identified his body." "I know," she said. "I know that. But Colette, look at that photo." I looked at it again. Same jaw, same broken nose, same left eyebrow sitting a fraction too low. "It's not possible," I said. "I know it shouldn't be," she said. "But will you help me figure out who this man is? Because if it's not him, then fine. But I need to know that it's not him." I stared at that photo for a long time after we hung up. The thing was, and this is the part I couldn't say out loud yet, not even to Bryn, the identification had never sat right with me. The truck had gone off the road in the dark, in icy conditions, down a steep embankment. By the time anyone found it, it had partially burned. The officer had been careful with his words. He'd said the remains were consistent with Matteo's profile, that they'd used dental records as best they could. That phrase had lived in the back of my mind for 8 months. Consistent with. Not conclusive. Consistent with. I had told myself I was looking for reasons to doubt because I couldn't accept what had happened. Grief does that to you. It makes you bargain and grasp at things that aren't there. But now, there was a photo. I called the volunteer program that night. I found their contact information through the woman's social media post. I left a voicemail explaining who I was. I said I thought I might recognize the man in the photo. I said please call me back as soon as possible. Then I sat on the couch and watched my phone until I fell asleep. They called back the next morning. A man with a quiet voice, very measured, who said his name was Dr. Okafor and that he was the physician overseeing care at the facility. He confirmed that, yes, a man matching that description had been found in November near the river. He said the man had sustained serious injuries, frostbite, a severe head injury, multiple fractures in his left arm. He said the man had survived because of family out that way. 2 brothers who ran a hunting operation had found him and driven him to the nearest town. And then Dr. Okafor said something that made the air leave my lungs completely. He said the man had no memory of who he was. Not fragmented memory. Not gaps. No memory. He hadn't been able to tell them his name. He hadn't been able to tell them where he came from, or what he'd been doing, or how he'd ended up near the river in November in a thin jacket with no phone and no wallet. "Has he been reported missing?" I asked. "We filed a report in December," Dr. Okafor said. "But without any identifying information and with the condition he was in, it's been difficult. He doesn't match any active missing persons cases we found." Because, I realized, the missing persons case had been closed, because there was a death certificate. Because as far as any official system was concerned, my husband was already gone. "Can I come see him?" I asked. There was a pause. "I would want to speak with you more before arranging that," Dr. Okafor said. "There are protocols, and I'd want you to be prepared for the possibility that this is not who you think it is. The resemblance may be coincidental." "I understand," I said. "I still need to come." Bryn drove me. We left 2 days later, 7 hours north, through stretches of Montana that looked like they belonged in a different century. Open rangeland, sky that went on forever, the occasional small town that appeared and disappeared in minutes. I didn't talk much. Bryn drove and drank gas station coffee and mostly left me alone. which was exactly what I needed. I kept thinking about the last normal morning we'd had together, the Sunday before he left for the job site. He'd made those terrible eggs and I'd pretended to like them, and he'd known I was pretending, and we'd laughed about it. He kissed me on the forehead before he went out to load his truck. He said, "I'll be back Thursday at the latest. Text me if you need anything." I texted him that Tuesday. He never texted back. We pulled up to the facility late in the afternoon. It was a small rehabilitation center attached to a regional hospital. Low buildings, a parking lot full of patches of old snow, pine trees along the back fence. Dr. Okafor met us in the lobby. He was a tall man with careful eyes, and he shook both our hands and led us to a small office where he asked me questions for almost 40 minutes. What my husband looked like. Specific details, scars, mannerisms, medical history, whether he was left or right-handed, what his voice sounded like. I answered everything I could. My hands were steadier than I expected. I think I'd moved past shaking into something quieter, something more like the feeling right before a verdict. Afterward, Dr. Okafor said he wanted to be honest with me. He said the man had made significant physical progress, but that his memory had not returned in any meaningful way. He remembered nothing before waking up in the hospital in November. He had adapted. He'd learned the staff's names. He'd developed preferences. He could have a full conversation, but his past was simply gone. He may not recognize you, Dr. Okafor said. I want you to be prepared for that. I know, I said. He walked us down a corridor and through a door that led outside. There was a small courtyard behind the building, a few benches, a walkway, some dormant garden beds still months away from spring, bare trees, the pale gray sky of late afternoon, and on one of the benches, with a book open in his lap that he wasn't reading, sat my husband. He was thinner. His hair was longer. There was a scar along his jaw. I didn't recognize. New and pale pink, still recent. His arm rested at a slightly wrong angle, the way it had been since the fractures. But his hands were the same. His shoulders were the same. The way he sat, slightly forward, elbows on his knees. It was so specific to him that I felt it like a physical thing in my chest. I stopped walking. I don't know how long I stood there. Bryn put her hand on my back. He looked up. He saw me, and his expression was polite, a little uncertain. The face of someone who meets strangers regularly and has learned to be friendly about it. "Hi," he said. "Hi," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. He looked at me the way you look at someone you've never seen before. Curious, a little cautious. Not unkind. "Are you new?" he asked. "A visitor?" "Yes," I said. "I am." I couldn't say more than that. Not yet. Dr. Okafor introduced me simply as someone from out of town who had come to visit. He didn't explain further. That was what we'd agreed. No pressure, no sudden revelation, just proximity. I sat on the bench across from him. Bryn hung back near the door, giving us space. We talked for almost an hour that first day. About nothing, really. He told me about the book he was reading, a novel someone on staff had lent him. He told me he'd discovered he liked chess but was bad at it. He had a dry humor that surfaced in small ways, a slight smile when he said something wry, and every time I saw it I had to look away for a moment, because that was Matteo's humor, exactly. I came back the next day, and the day after that, Bryn stayed with me at a motel in the nearest town, patiently, without complaint. I spent hours in that courtyard. I talked to him the way you talk to someone you've just met. Careful and curious, learning his current self even as I recognized pieces of the person I already knew. He never asked why I kept coming back. He seemed to accept it simply, the way he accepted most things, without much resistance or too many questions. On the 5th day, I brought something with me. It was a small Bluetooth speaker, the one that used to sit on our kitchen counter, and I played a song. It wasn't a romantic song. It wasn't even a song we'd dance to or anything like that. It was a folk song Matteo had grown up with, something his grandmother used to play, that he'd introduced me to early in our relationship and that had slowly become background music to our whole life together. We played it on road trips. We played it when we cooked. I played it in the weeks after the accident and had to turn it off because it was too much. I pressed play and set the speaker on the bench beside me and looked out at the bare garden like I was just enjoying the afternoon. He was quiet. After maybe a minute, I glanced over. He had gone very still. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the middle distance, his jaw set, his expression difficult to read. "Do you know this song?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. Several seconds passed. Then he said, "I don't know where I know it from." "That's okay," I said. "It's an old one." We sat in silence. The song kept playing. And then, slowly, he started to hum it, just barely, under his breath, almost involuntarily, the way you hum something you've heard so many times it lives in your body rather than your mind. My throat closed. I reached into my bag and took out my phone. I pulled up a photo. Not of us, not of anything dramatic, just a photo of the kitchen counter where that speaker used to sit, the same speaker that was playing right now, the coffee maker in the background, a tea towel we'd had since our first apartment. I held it out to him without saying anything. He looked at the photo. He looked at it for a long time. "That speaker?" he said finally. "Yes," I said. Something moved across his face. Not recognition exactly. Not the movie version, not a gasp and a flood of memory. It was slower than that, quieter, like watching ice thaw. His eyes moved from the phone to the speaker on the bench beside me, and then to my face. "Who are you?" he asked. His voice was different now, not unfriendly, but serious, searching. I put the phone down. I looked at him for a moment. Then I said, "My name is Colette, and I think you're my husband." He didn't speak. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't fully name. Not denial, not confirmation, just something vast and unsettled moving behind his eyes. "I don't remember a wife," he said slowly. "I know," I said. "I know you don't." "Then why do you think?" "Because I know your hands," I said. "And the way you hold a book. And the way you laughed yesterday when you made that joke about the chess piece. And this song." I paused. "And that broken nose. And that eyebrow." I pointed. "That one. The left one. You broke that nose on a basketball court when you were 19. You always said you were going to get it fixed, and you never did." He reached up and touched his nose. Almost without thinking, a long silence opened up between us. "There was an accident," I said. I told him what I knew. The icy road. The truck. The embankment. The fire. I told him about the death certificate. I told him about the 8 months. I told him about my sister sending me a photo and the 7-hour drive and the 5 days of sitting in this courtyard. I didn't cry while I told him. I'd already cried everything I had in those 8 months. There was nothing left but the words. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, we sat in silence for a while. The song had ended and looped back to the beginning. "I don't remember any of it," he said finally. His voice was careful, like he was picking through something fragile. "I know," I said. "That must be." He stopped. Started again. That must have been a very long 8 months. Something about how simply he said it. Not "I'm sorry," not "that's terrible," just a quiet acknowledgement of what it had cost me, undid me in a way that nothing else had. I pressed my hand over my eyes and breathed for a moment. Then I felt something. His hand, placed carefully over mine on the bench. Not a grip, just a touch. The way you'd steady something that was in danger of falling. I looked at him. He was watching me with an expression that was entirely new. Not the polite stranger, not the cautious patient, but something more like someone standing at the edge of a country he doesn't recognize but feels, in some wordless way, might be home. "I don't know if I'll remember," he said. "I want to be honest with you. I don't know if it comes back or not." "I know," I said. "But I'd like to try to figure out who I am," he said. "If you're willing to help with that." I looked at him, at this face I had memorized in 1,000 ordinary moments, mornings and arguments and Sunday breakfasts and long drives, in the specific, unremarkable miracle of just being in the same room with someone you love. "I've got nothing but time," I said. The memory did not return all at once. I want to be clear about that because I think people expect the dramatic version. A sudden rush, a single moment, the lights coming back on. That is not what happened. What happened was slower, and in some ways, harder. Dr. Okafor arranged for a formal confirmation, records, physical examination details that matched what I provided, the fracture pattern in the arm that was consistent with what could have happened in a rollover accident in that terrain. The pieces aligned. It was him. Officially, provably him. And still he did not remember. I went back to our house. I packed a bag. I took a leave from work. And I came back to Montana. Over the following weeks, I brought things, not big things. I didn't bring wedding albums or boxes of letters. I brought small things. Ordinary things. His old coffee mug, the one that had been sitting on the kitchen counter for 8 months because I couldn't bring myself to put it away. A paperback book that had lived on his nightstand, still bookmarked where he'd stopped reading. A photograph of the two of us from a camping trip 3 years ago, neither of us looking at the camera, both of us laughing at something out of frame. Some of it landed, some of it didn't. He knew the mug before I told him anything about it. He held it in both hands and said, "I think I'd drink my coffee black." And I told him, "Yes, always." And he was quiet for a moment in a way that meant something was moving that neither of us could quite see yet. He didn't recognize the camping photo. He studied it like he was looking at pictures of someone else's life. That was the hardest part. Not that he didn't remember. I had prepared myself for that as much as you can prepare yourself for something that has no real precedent. What was hard was the uncertainty. Not knowing what would surface and what wouldn't. Not knowing whether the man I was building a new relationship with inside that courtyard would ever fully connect to the man who had made terrible eggs and kissed me on the forehead and promised to text when he arrived. But here's what I know. One evening, about 6 weeks in, we were sitting outside after dinner. It was warmer by then, the first real warmth of spring, and the light was that particular gold color that only happens in late afternoon. He had been quieter than usual. I didn't push. I had learned not to push. Then he said out of nowhere, "When I imagine home, I see a kitchen with yellow curtains." I went very still. Our kitchen had yellow curtains. I had put them up 2 years ago, and Matteo had said they were impractical because they were linen and would absorb every cooking smell. He had been right, and I'd kept them anyway. "Yeah?" I said carefully. "I don't know why," he said. "I don't see anything else. Just that. Yellow curtains and morning light." I didn't say anything for a moment. I let it sit anything for a moment. I let it sit. Then I said, "When you're ready, I'd really like to show you the house." He looked at me. That searching look. The one I had come to know in the weeks of sitting in that courtyard. And then, slowly, he nodded. "Okay," he said. "Yeah, I think I'd like that." We are not back to where we were. I want to say that honestly, because I think it matters. The man I am with now is not identical to the man I married. He has new habits, new preferences, things he developed in those months before I found him, and things that have emerged since. He doesn't always laugh at the same things. He learned to play chess while he was at the facility, and he's gotten much better at it. And Matteo, before the accident, thought chess was boring. But there are mornings when I catch him standing at the kitchen window with his coffee, in that same mug, looking out at the yard with that particular expression of his, that quiet contentment, and the familiarity of it is so complete that it takes my breath away a little. He remembered our first date 3 months after we came home. Just woke up one morning and told me about it over breakfast. Not everything, just one image. The two of us at a food truck in the rain sharing something in a paper basket, laughing because we'd both forgotten an umbrella. I didn't correct a single detail. He had it exactly right. He is still remembering, slowly, in pieces, the way light comes back after a long winter, not all at once but steadily, one morning at a time. And I am still here, still learning who he is now, alongside the man I already knew. Some days that is the hardest thing I've ever done. Most days it is enough. I've thought a lot about what this experience actually taught me, not the headline version, not love conquers all or never give up hope. Those phrases are too clean for what this actually was. What I lived through was messy and slow and full of moments where I genuinely didn't know if I was doing the right thing or just refusing to let go of something I needed to release. But here's what I keep coming back to. There's a version of me that, 8 months in, had already made peace with losing Matteo. A version that had folded his flannel shirt, finally washed it, put it in a drawer, and started, slowly, rebuilding a life without him in it. That version of me was doing something hard and honest. There was nothing wrong with her. And then my sister sent a photo and everything I thought I knew cracked open. What I understand now is that grief, real grief, is not the enemy of love. It's proof of it. Those 8 months when I cried and sat in the dark and couldn't make myself put away his coffee mug, that wasn't weakness. That was my whole self refusing to reduce someone I loved to a past tense before I was ready. There's a kind of moral honesty in that. You don't get to skip it. You don't get to manage your way around it. You just have to go through it, and the going through is what builds the kind of person who can sit in the courtyard in Montana for 5 days and wait. Bryn used to say I was too stubborn for my own good. She was right, mostly. But stubbornness, when it's pointed in the right direction, is just another word for not giving up on something that deserves more time. And Matteo, the version of Matteo sitting on that bench who didn't know my name, he was doing the same thing. He was rebuilding from nothing, learning who he was with no map, no history, no one to tell him what he used to love. He did that with a patience and a quiet steadiness that I found myself trying to match. He taught me something about starting over without self-pity, about deciding, without the benefit of memory, to be curious about life rather than afraid of it. I think about that a lot when things are hard now, when the not knowing gets to be too much. When I'm sitting across from him at breakfast and I can't tell if what he's feeling is a memory surfacing or just a Tuesday morning, I think about who he was in that courtyard, careful, honest, unguarded, and I think that whatever the accident took from him, it left something intact underneath, some core thing that is still unmistakably him. That's what I want to carry forward from all of this, not a lesson about fate or luck or things working out the way they're supposed to. Because honestly, I don't know that they do. I know that I got something back that most people don't. And I know that the reason I was there to find it was because I stayed honest. With myself, with my grief, with the possibility that I might be wrong about what I knew. If there's anything I'd pass on from any of this, it's just that. Stay honest even when it's inconvenient. Do the hard thing before the easy one. And when someone you love is standing right in front of you and can't find their way back yet, be patient enough to wait. Because sometimes memory lives in the body long after the mind has gone quiet. And sometimes all it takes is a song, a mug, a pair of yellow curtains in morning light. And something that was lost starts, slowly, to find its way home.